Cholera is a disease of water. It travels in rivers and wells, and any source contaminated by waste of those already infected. It kills through dehydration, draining the body of fluids faster than they can be replaced, turning healthy people into corpses within days or sometimes hours. In the 19th century, cholera killed millions worldwide, sweeping through cities and settlements with speed that seemed supernatural, leaving survivors to wonder why some died and others lived. The answer was filtration, though most people did not know it. Water that passed through sand and gravel filtered slowly through layers that trapped microscopic organisms causing disease. That water was safe. The process had been understood in Europe for decades, used in cities like London after cholera epidemics proved contaminated. Water was the source of death. But this knowledge had not reached most American settlements, had not been carried to the frontier where people drank directly from creeks and trusted that clear-looking water was clean. Willem van der Berg's father had been a doctor in Amsterdam before bringing his family to America. Peter van der Berg had studied cholera epidemics ravaging Europe, learned how sand filtration removed disease-causing organisms, brought that knowledge when he emigrated in 1868. He intended to establish a practice in the growing territories, to bring European medical science to places that needed it desperately. Instead, he died of fever on a Missouri homestead in 1871, along with his wife, leaving 12-year-old Willem alone with medical texts and knowledge no one else possessed. The settlement took Willem in because there was no alternative. An orphaned child could not starve, even a foreign child with strange ideas and stranger books. They placed him with the Dawson family, who needed farm help and considered the Dutch boy's constant reading a waste of time, better spent on labor. Willem worked as required, but in free moments he read his father's books, studying water purification with particular attention. Understanding the creek everyone drank from was exactly the dangerous water source his father had warned about. He built his first sand filter in spring 1872, a simple barrel filled with layers of gravel and sand through which he diverted creek water. The process was slow, output limited, but water emerging was visibly cleaner, suspended particles trapped by sand, invisible contaminants reduced by biological action of the filter bed his father's books described in detail. Neighbors noticed immediately. The Dutch orphan was doing something strange at the creek, building contraptions with barrels and sand, diverting water through systems no one understood. Water coming out looked different from water going in, and different was suspicious, potentially dangerous. Exactly the foreign foolishness Silas Crenshaw had warned about. Crenshaw came to investigate on a May afternoon, finding Willem adjusting flow rate through his filter, monitoring output clarity with careful scientific attention. The big farmer stood at the creek's edge, watching with the expression of a man viewing evidence of crime. "What are you doing to our water, boy?" Crenshaw demanded. Willem looked up at the farmer who controlled most settlement decisions. "Filtering it, removing things that make people sick. My father taught me how. Sand traps particles carrying disease. Water coming out is safer than water going in." Crenshaw's red face darkened. "Your father was a foreign fool who filled your head with nonsense, then died like everyone else. We've drunk from this creek 5 years, and no one got sick. You're not filtering anything. You're poisoning our water with whatever's in those barrels." "There is nothing except sand and gravel," Willem said calmly. "Sand removes contamination. It does not add it. If you would read materials my father left, you would understand the science. The mention of reading, of science, of understanding. Exactly the words Crenshaw considered evidence of dangerous thinking. Boys should work, not read. Boys should accept what elders told them, not explain science to grown men. The Dutch orphan was exactly the influence Crenshaw believed was ruining America. The accusation came 3 days later at a settlement meeting Willem was not invited to. Crenshaw presented his case with confidence of a man never wrong about anything. The Dutch boy is poisoning our creek. I have seen his contraption. He diverts water through barrels filled with substances he will not identify. And water coming out is different from water going in. He claims this is science, but I know poison when I see preparation for poison. His foreign father filled his head with dangerous ideas. I recommend we exile him before he kills someone. The settlement agreed because Crenshaw told them to. The Dawsons did not defend Willem because opposing Crenshaw meant consequences no family wanted. The vote was nearly unanimous. Willem would be exiled for trying to purify water everyone else drank contaminated. He was given 1 day to gather possessions. He packed his father's books, filter construction notes, few tools he had accumulated, and walked out of the settlement on May 15th, 1872, headed upstream to build what the settlement refused to let him build. His sand filters saved 64 lives. Subscribe to Wild West Retribution and tell me in the comments where you're watching from, because when cholera came to prove him right, the boy they exiled for poisoning water was the only one with water that didn't kill. Willem found a site 2 miles upstream, where creek ran clean over gravel beds and natural spring supplemented flow with water from underground. He built shelter first, then began constructing filtration systems with obsessive focus of someone who knew lives would depend on what he built. The filters he created were more sophisticated than his simple barrel demonstration. He built 3-stage systems where water passed through coarse gravel, removing large particles, then fine sand trapping smaller contaminants, then charcoal removing organic matter. He built slow filters where water took hours percolating through deep sand beds, allowing biological layer his father's books called Schmutzdecke to develop and trap microscopic disease organisms. He built multiple parallel systems for maintenance rotation. By summer's end, he had capacity filtering hundreds of gallons daily, far more than he needed alone. But Willem was not building for himself. He was building for the moment when the settlement would need what he created, when water they trusted would betray them. Cholera arrived in Missouri summer 1873, traveling up rivers from New Orleans, spreading settlement to settlement. It followed water as it always did, finding communities drinking from contaminated sources, leaving mass graves marking its passage. The first case in Willem's former settlement appeared late July. Thomas Brennan developed characteristic symptoms, severe diarrhea and vomiting draining fluids in hours. He died within 2 days, and before burial, 3 more were sick. By week's end, 11 dead and 20 more showed symptoms. The settlement that exiled Willem for purifying water was dying from contamination he had tried to remove. The creek was the source. Someone had contaminated it upstream, and now everyone drinking from it was drinking death. They tried boiling water, but fuel was limited. They tried other sources, but those were contaminated too, or too far. They tried everything experience suggested, and experience was insufficient, and people continued dying. Sarah Brennan, Thomas's widow, remembered the Dutch boy, his filter systems, his explanations about removing contamination, his certainty the creek was dangerous. She remembered Crenshaw convincing everyone Willem was poisoning water when he had been trying to save them. She set out upstream to find him, despite illness weakening her body. She found Willem's camp by following the creek, the elaborate filtration systems, clear water flowing into his stone-lined pool. She found the boy tending filters, checking sand depths, maintaining systems no one believed necessary. "The settlement is dying," Sarah said, her voice hoarse. "Cholera, the water. You were right about everything." She swayed. "Please, if your filters work, if your water is safe, please help us. I know what we did, but children are dying, and you're the only one who might save them." Willem looked at the woman who sat silent while Crenshaw accused him, who voted to exile a 12-year-old for trying to help. He could have refused. He could have let the settlement suffer consequences of their decision. "Bring containers," Willem said instead. "As many as you can carry. Tell everyone who can still walk to come here and stop drinking from the creek. The creek water is killing you. My water will not." They came in waves, healthy first, then sick who could move, then sick carried by others. They came with buckets and barrels, filling containers from Willem's pool, carrying filtered water back to a settlement, finally understanding what the Dutch boy tried to teach. They came for days until the epidemic ran its course. 64 people lived who would have died without clean water. 23 died despite clean water, too far gone when they stopped drinking contaminated creek. The settlement lost a quarter of its population to water. Willem tried to purify, saved the rest with water. His exile gave him time to prepare. Silas Crenshaw was among survivors. He had not come himself, sent his wife for water while he stayed in his cabin, too proud to face the boy he condemned. He drank filtered water without acknowledging where it came from, survived because of systems he had called poison. The reckoning came in September when the epidemic passed. They met at the church, families diminished by death. Willem was invited. No one called him a poisoner. Sarah Brennan spoke first. "We exiled a child for trying to protect us. Silas told us the boy was poisoning water, and we believed him because believing was easier than understanding. 23 people are dead because we trusted Silas instead of Willem. 64 are alive because Willem built what we tried to prevent." She turned to face Crenshaw. "I think Silas owes this settlement an apology. I think Silas owes this boy more than an apology." Crenshaw stood, red face pale now, bluster gone, authority destroyed by the epidemic his ignorance allowed. "I was wrong," he finally said, like stones, heavy and painful. "I was wrong about the water, wrong about the boy, wrong about everything. I do not expect forgiveness. I do not deserve it. But I acknowledge I was wrong. It was not enough. 23 people dead because Crenshaw trusted suspicion more than knowledge. But it was acknowledgement that might prevent the same mistake again." Willem spoke last. He did not rage or demand punishment. He simply explained, one more time, what he had been trying to explain. "The disease lives in water. You cannot see it, but it is there. Sand filtration removes it because particles carrying disease are larger than spaces between sand grains. The filter traps what would otherwise kill you." He looked around at faces, finally not dismissing what they could not see. "My father taught me this. The knowledge exists. You only have to be willing to learn it." The settlement rebuilt around Willem's knowledge. He taught them to construct filters, maintain sand beds, keep contaminated water away from clean sources. The practice spread to neighboring settlements, carried by survivors who learned the hardest way that invisible threats were still threats, that foreign knowledge could save American lives. Willem van der Berg lived on his upstream camp 3 more years, saving money selling filtered water to buy his own land. He became a doctor like his father, studying through correspondence and practical experience, establishing a practice emphasizing sanitation and water safety. He never moved back to the settlement that exiled him, but never stopped providing filtered water, never stopped teaching, never stopped honoring his father's memory. He passed in winter 1931, age 71, having lived to see germ theory accepted, municipal water filtration standard, cholera a disease of the past. He had been a child when he built his first filter, a child when exiled for trying to help, a child when he saved 64 lives with knowledge adults refused to believe. He died an old man who spent his career proving what you cannot see can still kill you. The settlement eventually built a proper water treatment system, one of the first in rural Missouri. They named it Vanderburg Water Works. There is a small plaque at the original creek bank site. Here in 1872, Willem Vanderburg, age 12, built the sand filter that would save 64 lives during the cholera epidemic of 1873. He was exiled for his efforts. He helped anyway. The settlers who called him a poisoner, who voted to cast him out, who survived because he built what they tried to prevent. They understood what those words meant. He was exiled for his efforts. He helped anyway. That was the measure of the Dutch boy's character. If this story taught you something about how invisible threats require invisible solutions, subscribe to Wild West Retribution. We have more forgotten knowledge that saved lives when nothing else could. And tell me in the comments, have you ever been right about something no one believed until it was almost too late? Sand and gravel and charcoal. That was the difference between life and death. Just layers trapping what the eye could not see, built by a boy exiled for knowing too much.